If I really meant something to her, why did she choose him over me? It's emotionally charged, instantly relatable, and hints at unspoken tension. The perfect slow burn draw for YouTube viewers. If you want, I can give 5 alternative hooks too, so you can pick the strongest one. Do you want me to do that? The story begins with a sense of quiet longing, a feeling that lives in the spaces between words and glances. The male narrator watches her from a distance, observing not just what she does, but the subtle ways she carries herself. She moves with a graceful confidence, her posture upright yet relaxed, the kind of composure that draws attention without demanding it. At 40-something, there's an elegance in the way she smiles, a softness around the edges that hints at moments of vulnerability. He notices the small details first, how the sunlight catches a strand of her hair as she tucks it behind her ear, how her fingers linger on the stem of her coffee cup when she's deep in thought, tapping lightly, almost absent-mindedly. He sees the way she laughs, full and unrestrained, but he also notices the quiet sigh that follows when she glances at her phone, a trace of wistfulness in her expression. These little observations aren't just curiosity. They're a mirror to his own feelings, each detail amplifying the longing he carries quietly inside him. Even as she moves through life with someone else now, someone she chose over him, he cannot help but linger on what remains unsaid. Watching her walk down the street, her laughter blending with the hum of the city, he feels the tug of something he cannot claim. There's a hollow ache in knowing she's happy in her own way, but the heart notices the nuance, the slight hesitation in her steps when she passes by places they used to frequent, the fleeting glances she throws in directions where she once knew him to be. He wonders if she notices him, or if the past is simply a shadow to her present. Every encounter is magnified by restraint. A brief brush of arms when she reaches for the same book in a store. The way her gaze lingers for half a heartbeat too long when their eyes meet across a crowded room. He feels the warmth of her presence even in moments of passing, like sunlight seeping through a narrow window. Each subtle gesture, the tilt of her head, the soft curve of a smile directed at him, sends ripples through his chest. It's quiet, almost painfully restrained, and yet it carries a weight that no words could ever capture. Internally, he navigates a tangle of hope and respect. He cannot speak the longing aloud, cannot risk imposing on her happiness, yet he feels tethered to these moments of observation. There's a bittersweet rhythm to it, the joy of seeing her, the ache of knowing he might never be the one she chooses, and the wonder at how deeply a silent connection can exist. Even though the world sees her with someone else, in these fleeting, intimate glimpses, he senses a shared history, a quiet thread of unspoken understanding that binds them together in ways no one else can touch. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel his restrained longing, his careful observation, and the subtle tension that will build throughout the story. This opening sets the emotional tone, a slow-burn romance grounded in human warmth, subtle sensory detail, and the bittersweet ache of unspoken love. The quiet longing of the narrator intensifies as life orchestrates small, accidental encounters. There's something almost cruel in the timing. He never plans to see her, yet the universe seems intent on these fleeting, charged moments. It begins with ordinary places, a bookstore aisle, the corner cafe where he sometimes sits alone, or the park bench he chooses when he wants to think. And there she is, moving through the same space, unaware that her presence stirs a storm of unspoken emotion in him. Each encounter carries the weight of possibility, however small, and the tension is palpable in the narrator's chest. When their hands brush over a book, accidental, innocent, his fingers linger a fraction too long, sensing the warmth that radiates from her skin. His pulse catches, the moment extending in his mind far longer than it does in reality. She smiles politely, unaware of the ripple she has caused in him, and he almost wishes for a reason to speak, a pretext to prolong the closeness without risking propriety. The sensory details are what anchor these encounters. He notices the subtle scent of her perfume, a soft floral note that lingers in the air long after she passes. He hears the melodic cadence of her voice as she laughs with someone else, a sound that is at once joyful and bittersweet, carrying echoes of times when their conversations were longer, more intimate. Even the way sunlight catches her hair, setting it aglow against the backdrop of the city, feels orchestrated, as if the world itself conspires to remind him of her presence. There's a tension in every glance, in every near collision. He finds himself analyzing the smallest gestures, the way her eyes follow a bird across the sky, the faint tilt of her head when she's curious about something, or the subtle way she leans slightly towards someone when listening intently. He knows these are ordinary behaviors, yet in the charged lens of his attention, they are imbued with meaning. Every fleeting smile she directs at him, or even at someone else while he watches, feels like a puzzle piece of an unspoken conversation, fragments of connection he can neither claim nor fully understand. Emotionally, this keynote is about restraint. He struggles between the desire to step forward and the respect that holds him back. His internal monologue is rich with nuance, wanting to reach out, to say something that might shift the dynamic, yet fearing that any action could disrupt the delicate balance of their interactions. These accidental encounters are a dance of near misses and subtle signals, heartbeats brushing close, moments of proximity that leave him both exhilarated and frustrated. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel the electric tension of proximity, the sensory immersion of accidental closeness, and the emotional pull of unspoken attraction. It deepens the slow burn foundation laid in Keynote 1, showing that love and desire can live in fleeting, restrained moments, and that sometimes the most meaningful connections are those never openly declared. Even the most composed person carries hidden corners of vulnerability, and the narrator begins to see those quiet cracks in her carefully maintained confidence. She moves through her days with poise, with the assuredness of someone who has faced life's challenges and emerged gracefully. Yet, there are fleeting moments, private, unguarded, that reveal a softer, more human side of her. These glimpses make the narrator's heart ache in a way that is both tender and bittersweet. The first hint of this vulnerability comes during a solitary moment, perhaps at a park bench, a library corner, or a small cafe tucked away from the city's bustle. She's there alone, sipping a cup of tea or sketching something absent-mindedly, her expression thoughtful, almost wistful. Her posture relaxes in these private moments, shoulders loosening from their usual upright elegance, and the narrator notices how her fingers trace the rim of her cup, idly, almost as if grounding herself in the present. The sight strikes him with quiet intensity. Here is someone so confident and composed in public, yet in private, she carries a fragility that no one else sees. Her eyes are particularly revealing. When they catch his, even briefly, they carry a flicker of something unspoken, a thought she does not voice, a question she perhaps does not even consciously acknowledge. It is in these moments he feels closest to her, not because she chooses him over another, but because he witnesses her humanity in a way no one else does. The subtle vulnerability she reveals is not a plea for attention. It is simply her being herself. And yet, for him, it is magnetic, a thread drawing him deeper into the silent, emotional landscape they share. The narrator senses that these moments are layered with complexity. Even as she laughs lightly at something on her phone or hums along with music only she can hear, there's an undercurrent of reflection. He notices the small hesitations, the soft sighs, the way her eyes drift toward empty spaces in the room, as if she is measuring memories against the present. Each of these gestures, though seemingly mundane, feels laden with emotion, and he finds himself holding his breath, aware that no words could ever capture the full weight of what passes between them. There is also a quiet tension in proximity. When he moves near, the air between them seems charged with unspoken understanding. A hand brushing against a table near hers, the soft click of her necklace against her collarbone, the subtle scent of her perfume carried just so in the space around her. They are minor sensory details, yet they make the encounter feel intimate. It is in these delicate, almost imperceptible moments that he senses her duality. The confident woman the world sees, and the quietly contemplative person who allows herself brief, honest reflection when alone. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel the narrator's growing emotional intimacy with her, not through grand gestures or dramatic confessions, but through observation, empathy, and the quiet recognition of her humanity. The story deepens here, showing that emotional connection is not always about proximity or ownership, but about understanding, noticing, and valuing the subtleties of another person's inner world. This keynote plants the seeds of tension and longing that will continue to grow, as both admiration and unspoken desire intertwine. The tension between longing and restraint reaches a new depth as the narrator begins to confront the complexities of his own emotions. Seeing her, observing her moments of vulnerability, and sensing the subtle ways she still connects with him, even while with someone else, he cannot escape the storm of feelings rising quietly within him. It's a mixture of admiration, yearning, and an ache of helplessness that gnaws at him with a steady persistence. Internally, he battles with himself. Part of him wants to speak, to let her know what he has felt for years, to close the gap between them that life and circumstance have widened. Yet another part knows that expressing those feelings could disrupt the delicate balance they currently share. He respects her choices, her autonomy, her life, but that doesn't make the emotional pull any easier to bear. The struggle itself becomes a source of tension, a slow-burn conflict that the audience can feel with each moment he observes her. Their interactions, though seemingly ordinary, are charged with subtle intensity. A shared joke at work, an accidental brush of hands while passing a book, or a quiet exchange of glances across a crowded room. All of these moments feel like tiny revolutions in his heart. He notices everything. The way her eyes soften when she laughs at something he says, the tilt of her head that suggests curiosity or interest, the warmth that lingers when their shoulders graze in passing. These details, small in the context of the world, are monumental in the intimate space of his perception. The narrator's self-reflection deepens as he observes her in more private settings. Perhaps she asks for advice on something personal or seeks his opinion about a minor decision. The trust implicit in these moments, her reliance on his insight, her subtle vulnerability in his presence, stirs something in him that he cannot ignore. The physical closeness is almost electric, her hand resting near his on a table, the faint brush of her sleeve against his arm, the subtle shift of her posture as she leans in slightly when speaking. Each sensation is a reminder of what could be and what must remain unspoken. Emotionally, this keynote is about tension between desire and decorum, between longing and respect. The narrator grapples with jealousy of the other man she has chosen, but it is a quiet, internalized jealousy, never expressed. It is mixed with admiration for the woman he loves, admiration for her strength, her grace, her ability to carry herself through life while revealing fragments of her inner self to him alone. There is also a bittersweet recognition that love does not always demand possession. Sometimes, it thrives in subtle gestures and unspoken understanding. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel the narrator's internal struggle vividly. The push and pull of affection and restraint, the bittersweet ache of unspoken longing, and the slow-burn tension that will continue to build toward the story's emotional peak. This chapter solidifies the narrative's emotional depth, showing that true intimacy is not always declared with words, but observed, felt, and cherished quietly, in the spaces between shared moments. By this point in the story, the tension between longing and restraint has reached its peak. The narrator finds himself on the edge of confession, not in words, but in small, intimate moments that carry the weight of unspoken desire. The emotional climax emerges not from grand gestures, but from the quiet intensity of proximity, the electricity in shared space, and a delicate dance of glances and touches that speak louder than words ever could. It begins in a private moment, one that seems ordinary at first, a quiet afternoon in a park, a walk down a familiar street, or a shared task that brings them together. Perhaps she asks for his help with something personal, or he offers guidance she didn't explicitly seek. In these moments, the world seems to shrink around them. The narrator notices the subtle shifts in her body language. The way her hand lingers near his as they pass an object back and forth, the faint brush of her sleeve against his arm, the tilt of her head as she listens intently. Each of these gestures sends a current through him, a reminder that closeness, even unspoken, carries its own truth. Her eyes, in particular, become a mirror for the emotional undercurrent between them. When she looks at him, there is a softness, a vulnerability, a flicker of curiosity that hints at what she might feel but does not say. And yet, these glances are fleeting, careful, restrained by propriety and circumstance. For the narrator, each look is a silent confession, a whisper of connection that exists in the space where words are unnecessary. The tension is heightened by what is left unsaid. He feels the urge to reach out, to speak the truth of his feelings, to bridge the gap that life and choice have created. But the risk of shattering her current happiness restrains him. Instead, he communicates in subtler ways, a gentle touch to guide her hand, a hand resting lightly on her shoulder as they pause, a supportive glance that lingers a heartbeat too long. The audience should feel the intensity of these near confessions, the charged energy of emotions hovering just below the surface, waiting for a moment to be acknowledged but held back out of respect and care. This keynote also explores the narrator's inner turmoil. He is acutely aware of the other man in her life, the one she chose, and a quiet jealousy simmers beneath his calm exterior, but is tempered by admiration and empathy. He understands her choices, yet cannot deny the depth of his own longing. The complexity of these emotions, desire mingled with respect, yearning mixed with restraint, is what makes this stage of the story so compelling. By the end of Keynote 5, the audience should feel the emotional peak of the slow-burn romance. It is a moment of almost revelation, where desire and connection are palpable, yet carefully contained. The tension is at its highest, setting the stage for the eventual resolution, and leaving viewers deeply invested in the narrator's emotional journey. The story demonstrates that romance is often found not in declarations, but in the charged intimacy of shared space, fleeting touches, and silent understanding, the moments that linger in memory long after they pass. After the emotional climax of near confession, the narrator begins to navigate a quieter, deeper layer of their connection. The initial ache of longing is tempered by understanding and respect. He starts to accept her choice, not with bitterness, but with a mature recognition that love is not always about possession, and that emotional closeness can exist without altering the life she has chosen. This keynote explores the gentle shift from tension to warmth, where intimacy is nurtured through subtle gestures and shared moments rather than declarations or grand romantic gestures. Their interactions take on a soft, natural rhythm. Perhaps they meet in familiar spaces, a park bench bathed in late afternoon light, a quiet cafe, or even during errands that bring them together unexpectedly. These moments are ordinary on the surface, but charged with the quiet acknowledgement of shared history and mutual understanding. The narrator notices the subtle ways she still seeks him out, even casually, through a fleeting glance, a question that only he could answer, or a brief touch that lingers longer than necessary. Each interaction is a reminder that connection exists, even if it cannot be fully claimed. The sensory details are crucial in this keynote. He notices the warmth of her hand when it accidentally brushes against his as they pass an object, the gentle shift of her shoulders when they sit close, or the faint scent she carries, familiar and comforting. The subtle intimacy of these moments, arm lightly resting against his, shared laughter over a trivial observation, the soft cadence of her voice when she speaks privately, creates a warmth that fills the spaces between them. It is an intimacy that speaks of trust, care, and understanding rather than desire alone. Emotionally, the narrator experiences a mix of contentment and bittersweet longing. He knows she chose another, yet he also realizes that her reliance on him, her trust in his judgment, and her comfort in his presence carry their own quiet significance. There's a profound beauty in this emotional compromise. He can love her deeply, without needing to possess her, and she can remain a part of his life in a meaningful way. The tension of previous keynotes softens into a steady hum of closeness, subtle but deeply felt. This keynote also explores the narrator's inner reflections. He recognizes the growth in himself, the ability to accept complex emotions, to cherish another person's happiness without needing to be at the center of it. It is a turning point in his emotional journey, where longing is balanced by appreciation and desire is tempered by respect. The audience is invited to experience the warmth of connection that does not demand ownership, a rare and deeply human kind of intimacy. By the end of Keynote 6, the story has shifted from the height of emotional tension to a softer, more reflective stage. The slow-burn romance evolves into a mature, understated form of love, one that is respectful, emotionally deep, and grounded in subtle gestures of care. The stage is now set for the final keynote, where the emotional resolution will provide closure and a satisfying sense of completeness for the audience. The story reaches its gentle, heartfelt conclusion in this keynote. After months of quiet observation, subtle gestures, and emotional tension, the narrator and the woman arrive at a space of understanding and acceptance, a slow-burn intimacy that doesn't need declarations to feel profound. The romance in this final stage is no longer about longing or what might have been. It is about presence, shared moments, and the quiet joy of emotional closeness that endures without needing to possess. The emotional tone is warm and reflective. The narrator notices her in an unguarded moment, a shared walk during a golden afternoon, a pause to watch the sunlight scatter across the leaves, or even a simple exchange of books at a familiar cafe. These ordinary moments are now imbued with profound meaning. He sees her smile, genuine and relaxed, without the tension of withheld desire or near confession. And yet, within that smile, there is a subtle acknowledgement of their shared history, of the moments only they understand. It is a private world built on quiet trust and mutual respect. Physical closeness remains gentle and meaningful. She may brush his arm lightly while laughing at a shared joke, or he may guide her hand for a moment as they reach for the same object, their fingers touching and lingering with unspoken understanding. Perhaps she rests her head briefly against his shoulder as they sit on a bench, not out of romantic impulse, but out of comfort and trust, the rhythm of her presence syncing naturally with his. The narrator feels the quiet steadiness of her heartbeat through these small touches, a warmth that fills him with both contentment and reverence. Internally, the narrator reflects on the journey that brought them here. He has felt longing, jealousy, and hesitation, but those emotions have matured into appreciation, care, and empathy. He understands the depth of human connection, that intimacy is not defined solely by romantic possession, but by the trust, understanding, and support shared between two people. The woman, too, shows subtle signs of comfort and reliance on him, gestures that speak louder than words, a lingering glance, a shared laugh, or a quiet nod of understanding. Their bond is resilient, gentle, and profoundly human. This keynote emphasizes emotional closure. There are no dramatic confessions or sweeping gestures. Instead, the narrative rewards the audience with a sense of completeness. The narrator has accepted her choice, yet their connection remains deep, unspoken but tangible. The subtle romantic tension that once simmered beneath the surface now rests in harmony with respect and understanding. The story demonstrates that slow-burn romance does not always climax in passion. It can culminate in quiet intimacy, a shared emotional resonance that lingers far longer than any fleeting desire. By the end, the audience should feel a sense of fulfillment. The narrator and the woman have reached a point where their emotional bond is fully acknowledged and treasured, a testament to love that is patient, observant, and grounded in humanity. Their story closes not with longing, but with warmth, trust, and the beauty of a connection that can exist quietly yet profoundly, leaving viewers with the satisfying realization that love is sometimes most powerful when it is gentle, respectful, and enduring.